Good afternoon, active Claremont. Hopefully I am coming in loud and clear. Everything looks good. If anybody is not able to hear me, you know, hopefully we're talking. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can see me, you can hear me, no problems. Let me know in chat if we are good. One quick announcement. We want to get straight to the candidates as soon as possible, but one quick announcement that we do have is Claremont Place is going to be putting on a margarita night drive-through. And for those that don't know, Claremont Place has hosted Active Claremont's Christmas party for years now, almost, probably over 10 years at this point. So Claremont Place doesn't know that we're doing this. But we wanted to make sure that because Claremont Place, the work that they do obviously is very important, and in particular, they've shown us a great amount of love, and so we want to let them know that we appreciate them as a community. So, if you'll notice here, they're having a margarita night drive-through on Tuesday the 22nd. And so I'm going to leave this on screen for just a second, but please note that they are asking for RSVPs by tomorrow. And then the phone number is provided there. So if you could, if you're interested, it's going to be a drive-through, it sounds like, taco night and margarita night, benefiting the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And just, there's a $10 donation to benefit the Alzheimer's Association. There's more information on the website there on your screen. And if you could, there's no benefit to us per se, but just let them know if you have heard about it already. If you haven't heard about it and you are hearing about it now, let them know that Active Claremont sent you their way, just so they know that we really appreciate their work and what they do to help our organization in particular, and I'm sure many other people too. So, without any further ado, I am Matt. I'm president of Active Claremont, and we have a wonderful presentation for you tonight, a little forum. We've already established some of the ground rules, but I want to go ahead and establish a little bit of the details with you in our audience. That way you're aware of kind of what we're doing over here behind the scenes and things that we may not have talked about on the stream. But we have talked about in behind the scenes. So we're going to start off with 5-minute introductions from our Claremont Unified School Board candidates. They're going to have 5 minutes each. An order has been selected already. We're going to have Bob go first, Kathy and Chris in that order to start. And then we're going to rotate order with each question. So 5-minute introductions each, and then we're going to go into some of the questions that we have already prepared from our Active Claremont membership. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat. If we have time, we're going to get to those questions. One thing that I do ask is that the questions are not pointed at any particular candidate, that they're able to be answered by all the candidates, and we'll give an equal amount of time. Every candidate is going to have 2 minutes to answer each question. And then at the end of our meeting here, we're going to have, to conclude, 10-minute closing remarks and closing statements. And then I know the candidates, also one thing I wanted to address, why have we started a little early? Normally our meetings are at 7 o'clock on Thursday, on the third Thursday, but the candidates obviously want to attend the school board meeting immediately following this presentation. So we appreciate you guys being accommodating, and you know, the only thing constant is change, but hopefully it's not too much of an inconvenience for anybody, and everybody understands why we are doing what we're doing. So enough of me. You're not here to see me. I'm going to bring in our candidates now, and we are going to start. I'm going to have a timer going, and as soon as I am done here, Bob, you are free to take it away. And let's see. Perfect. Once you start talking, Bob, I will set the timer to go. Also, I'll give you a quick heads up, not going to interrupt or anything, but sort of a minute and 30 seconds left, if that makes sense. Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you to the members of Active Claremont for hosting this and for having us here today. Obviously, it's not under the conditions that we would like to be meeting you, but we appreciate the opportunity nonetheless. My name is Bob Fass. I grew up in Claremont, and I attended Sycamore School, El Roble, and Claremont High School, and I'm also a proud parent. I have a daughter who is 15 and a son who is 12, and I've been working as a volunteer with the district for over a decade now. I started that experience working on the Claremont High School theater renovation, in which we were able to match some state redevelopment funds with some private funding and district funding to do a $3 million renovation to that facility. And it was very meaningful to me because it was named after one of my former teachers who was a mentor and somebody that had a big part in my life. That's Don Frichte. I went from there to the Sycamore School Governance Council and was not only instrumental in working with the leaders in the Governance Council, but also with Dr. Elsasser in installing the new Sycamore School Library, which is a modular that is just on the north side of the multi-purpose room on that campus. And from there, I joined the board of the Claremont Educational Foundation. I did so at the request of Nancy Tresser Osgood, who is a current school board member. And with CEF, I was able to lead 2 multi-year strategic plans, and I served as one of the presidents for 4 years. We were able to create a lot of new programming and refresh some of the things that were already in place with that organization. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the Community Partners Program and the Community Conversations Program. Those brought in our nonprofit community to work with our school kids, and also brought speakers to the community, not just our students and our parents, but community members as well, on important topics like cybersecurity and mental health. I also have been a consultant with CLASP, that's the Claremont After School Programs, and with Claremont Heritage, especially with their 3rd grade local history program. You know that Measure G passed and was the bond measure that supported $58 million of facilities funds for our district. And I now sit on the financial oversight, making sure that that committee is watching the spending of those funds and that they're being used correctly. And lastly, I work with the district as a member of the LCAP Parent Advisory Council. My background is in the arts and education. I have a degree in nonprofit management, and I've worked as an executive director of several professional theater organizations, but I've also served as a former professor, and I'm currently a staff member at a secondary school. That background brings to bear a lot of the budgetary data analysis, strategic planning side of my brain, but also the creative, collaborative, innovative side. I've used those skills to serve on more than a dozen boards in my career. And so I'm very familiar with governance and with the work of boards and how to work together in order to achieve a common mission and vision. Some of my priorities for the district, obviously health and safety is a big one. We need to reopen our schools, but we need to do so safely and with the right protocols in place. In my current job, I serve as the regulatory monitor, and I work with the LA County Department of Public Health to figure out what those protocols are going to be and what metrics we need to meet to be able to keep our teachers, our staff, and our students safe. I'm also very concerned with financial management of taxpayer dollars. We need to be very careful with how we're spending, and we also need to be very cognizant of the fact that those spending patterns will change over the years. Right now, we have a legislative budget that relies on deferrals, and those deferrals could cause a problem later unless there's another stimulus package put in place. Obviously, I wouldn't be in this if I wasn't concerned about academic excellence, and I'm very focused on core competencies like cross-cultural communication and collaboration. And lastly, I want to focus on parent and community engagement. It's very, very important to me to maintain the pace at which we have engaged our parents and community members. One of the benefits to distance learning and the use of Zoom technology has been the fact that we've had hundreds and hundreds of people attending our meetings and giving their input. I want to see that continue, and I want to carry it forward in town hall meetings as we prepare for the next strategic plan. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate this opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. All righty. Thank you so much, Bob. And next we have Kathy. Again, same rules apply. 5 minutes start as soon as I am done speaking.
So thank you very much, Matt. And thank you, Active Claremont, for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Kathy Archer. I'm running for one of the 2 open positions on the Claremont Unified School District School Board in the November election. I've lived in South Claremont for 25 years. My husband, Bill, and I have a 15-year-old daughter, Shelby. She's a sophomore at Claremont High School. For the past 23 years, I have worked at Charter Oak High School in Covina. Throughout my tenure, I've held numerous leadership roles on campus, including department chair, leadership team chair, and WASC task force chair. I coordinate both the International Baccalaureate and Advanced Placement programs at Charter Oak High School, and I teach 2 levels of world history. Prior to my work in education, I was a criminal defense attorney in Rancho Cucamonga. I'm running for the school board to expand my service and impact in public education. This fall, there are 2 experienced women stepping down from the current board, and I've been encouraged by colleagues and community members to run. It would be my honor to fill one of those vacant seats. You may recognize me as a member of the Measure G Steering Committee, which helped pass the $58 million bond in 2016 to repair and modernize CUSD facilities. And I did find out last night at our CEF meeting that the pool should be done in October, which is why I got involved in the bond, because my daughter's a swimmer. And because of a lack of concrete, there was a little bit of a slowdown, but we should be on track and hopefully back in the water in the spring. I am passionate about public education, and I hope to bring my skills and experience to the Claremont Unified School District School Board. I also sit on the board of the Claremont Educational Foundation, and I've served on the Grants Committee, Events Committee, and I was, until the campaign started, I was their social media person on starting the Instagram page. So as a member of the board, of the CUSD board, I plan to work collaboratively with our community to enhance existing programs and champion new opportunities, and most importantly, to support students, their families, and educators in our district. My main focus throughout the campaign and as an elected board member is on 4 main priorities. And the first one is educational equity, ensuring that every student has the access and support they need to achieve individual academic success. Now, equity is a broad term that encompasses several important issues at the forefront of our educational system. The impact of COVID-19 and this pandemic and the move to distance learning has brought student inequities to the surface. Some families are fortunate to be at home during the day to assist their students and can provide external supports like tutoring or supplemental activities to help them. For others, consistent in-home educational support is not possible. So I have deep concerns about these educational gaps, many of which will not be fully understood until students return to school in person. We'll need a multi-tiered system of support and intervention to address the needs of these students. As a board member, I will advocate strongly to help meet the needs of our most vulnerable populations. Educational equity also pertains to the measure of achievement, fairness, and opportunity for all students, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, or gender identification. And CUSD has taken a necessary step in forming the District Advisory Committee on Racial Equity. I'm pleased to see the district's acknowledgement of this critical issue, and this will be on the agenda tomorrow night when they announce the committee members. I'd also like to see implementation of a restorative justice program and strategies for adverse childhood experiences. I also would like to advocate for responsible fiscal management, okay, regarding budgeting for people, programs, facilities, and resources, because in our reality, we have to remain mindful of increasing budget challenges. I also look forward to continuing to foster a partnership between CUSD and its students and families through transparent conversation and collaboration. Recent participation at virtual board meetings has been at record attendance levels, and it's amazing to see the passion and investment that our community members have in their children's education. And as an elected board member, maintaining this type of conversation is a priority. And lastly, I believe that it is important to regularly address campus safety concerns, student wellness, responsible use of technology, and the need for safe and modern facility to build on the outstanding improvements accomplished with the Measure G bond. Additionally, post-COVID reintegration plans must be thoroughly thought through, and we must ensure adequate access to mental health supports. I plan to prioritize all of these should I be elected.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy. And now we have Chris. Again, same rules apply. 5 minutes start as soon as you start talking, Chris.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to Active Claremont for providing this forum and this opportunity to address the voters of Claremont. My name is Chris Natikia, and I live in Claremont with my wife and my daughter, who's a 14-year-old freshman at Claremont High School. A little about myself: I'm a college professor. I'm in my 26th year as a tenured professor at Cal State University, San Bernardino. I'm a city commissioner. I serve on the Community and Human Services Commission. I'm a former member of the El Roble School Site Council. I serve on the Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee, which is a school district committee. In my city commissioner, I'm the liaison to the city's Committee on Human Relations, and I am vice president of my campus chapter of the California Faculty Association. I'm running to stand up and speak up for Claremont students, the same way I've stood up and spoken up for others throughout my career, whether it's to bolster social, emotional, and mental health support for students, whether it's to strengthen critical thinking, to address equity issues, or to improve parent engagement. Today, we're facing times like we've never seen before. For this reason, we need a vision for public education that reaches beyond what it traditionally includes. We need a vision that gives our students support, prepares them for the world they'll encounter, heals the body politic, and invests in the future leaders of our schools. To give our students support, I will advocate to bolster the social, emotional, and mental health support that our students receive. To prepare them for the world they'll encounter, I'll advocate to strengthen critical thinking, to give them the tools and the skills to participate constructively in political discussion. To heal our body politic, I'll advocate to include ethnic studies in the curriculum and also to draw closer and narrower the achievement or equity gaps, and to invest in the future leaders of our schools. I'll advocate to improve parent engagement with the aim of developing parents for future leadership roles in our education community. For me, these just aren't words. I've backed them with actions. Consider mental health support. In my role as Vice President for the California Faculty Association, I've been in Sacramento and I've been local in lobbying state legislators for mental health support. When the Cal State University system didn't enhance that support, we went over their heads to the legislature and got a $2 million earmark for counselors across the 23 campus Cal State University system. Of course, for critical thinking, as a philosophy professor, that's an area of expertise. I've done that day in and day out for over 25 years. For ethnic studies, we just recently passed AB 1460, the 3-unit ethnic studies requirement in the Cal State University system. Was recently signed by Governor Newsom. It took a village to pass that. I was part of that village. And also to invest in future leaders of our schools. I've encouraged folks to apply for the Racial Equity Committee, which I believe I had some influence in helping get off the ground. So I thank Active Claremont today for providing this forum, and I look forward to our continuing dialogue and discussion today. My name is Chris Natikia, and I would be honored to have your support.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Just so you know, your camera, I think, is frozen a little bit. The video is a little spotty. Audio's good, but the video kind of froze up a little bit. So if that continues, you might try to turn off the camera within the meeting that we're having, and we'll still get the audio, if that makes sense. You can also try to turn off the camera and turn it back on. It might help with it, just so you're aware. Okay, so now we're moving into the questions. Thank you very much, candidates. We're going to have these questions with a 2-minute response per person. And then, Kathy, you're going to lead us off with the first question. Bob went first, so hopefully that makes sense with everybody. We're going to be rotating candidates. That way everybody has an opportunity to go first. So the first question that we have here, there are growing concerns about the long-term mental health effects of these seemingly endless lockdowns. How do we strike a balance between the physical safety and the mental health of students? What does reopening our schools look like to you?
Thank you. That's a great question. As a high school teacher, I have the same concerns. I have the same concerns as a parent. I spent some time this morning with a student who had younger siblings banging on the door during class, and it was a hard conversation, and we're trying to strategize how to best serve not only her situation, but help with the kids in the house and, faulty internet, et cetera. So I do absolutely sympathize with this on many levels. Dr. Elsasser at our CEF board meeting last night gave an update and really indicated that the overall answer to what's going on right now is unknown. There's a lot of conversations going on. Other counties are slated to reopen as soon as next week. Our district, according to Dr. Elsasser and Hilary LeConte, who was also present at the meeting, they're feeling good about the fact that these other districts are opening first because they'll be a litmus test for us. And Dr. Elsasser indicated that the board has made it clear that they don't want to open and close like a roller coaster. So they've decided to take a cautious approach and want it to be a permanent transition. On again, off again would be detrimental to students because each time you move into a phase, it takes a massive restructuring. And with each move, you want to make it permanent and not leave families in the lurch. You might have heard about waivers to reopen schools earlier, even if safety measures can be met, but LA County has announced they won't be accepting these waivers. So November 1st would be the earliest any district in LA County could consider reopening. What we really need to focus on is a phased approach, hopefully, where, and Dr. Elsasser was indicating about elementary before secondary. At any rate, it's a closely monitored situation, and the most important thing is to do it safely.
Thank you very much. Chris, your answer.
Thanks, Matt. So what I would stress is that we have a conflict here between safety on the one hand and the emotional well-being of our students on the other. And unfortunately, I think that in this terrible conflict that we have, which is through no fault of our own, that the safety of the students has to take priority. And that if we don't pay enough attention to safety, then we risk the opening and then reclosing of our schools that some universities are already experiencing right now. So I know it's hard for many families. It's hard for our family too. But I think the proper response here is to make sure we do it right the first time so that we don't have the opening and the reclosing. I'm proud to say that when the district initially announced that it was going to reopen, I went quite public and was visible about saying I think that this is premature. We had an event where a town hall where this was discussed at length, and a few days later, I'm happy to say the board decided rightly to reverse itself. I would definitely insist, as I said then, and would say now, that before we make any decision, we need to have some sort of projections on the extent and frequency of campus closures were we to reopen. So I too would want to make sure that this is something that's permanent and not something where we're constantly going back and forth. That would defeat the purpose of reopening. And so that critical piece of information is something that I would insist upon before reopening. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chris. And Bob, your answer.
Thank you so much, Matt. I was also very outspoken in a recent board meeting using a word that I think is really key to the solution to all of this, which is consistency. We have to be consistent with our students. We have to be consistent in their in-campus or distance learning. We have to be consistent in our grading. We have to be consistent in our communication. And it's really, really important, because the thing that will make them the most anxious is if they don't know what the rules are, if they don't know what's going to change from day to day or week to week, and there's enough uncertainty going on in many of their homes and in many of their personal lives, that if we add that into the school culture, it's really going to make their social emotional learning worse. The other thing that I want to emphasize is there's layers to this. So this is a national crisis. This isn't a Claremont crisis. We're going to experience this throughout the country. At the state level, the state came out with the blueprint for a safer economy, and it's got the 4-tiered colored system to it. But LA County Public Health supersedes the state. So LA County can choose to be more restrictive, not less restrictive, but more restrictive than the state. Well, so can Claremont Unified School District. So even if LA County chooses to reopen schools, Claremont Unified still has to make that choice. And so there are a lot of checks and balances in play here to make sure that we are able to keep our students in a situation where we know we bring them back when it's safe to do so. And once we do that, we stick to it. It's very, very important to not pull the rug out from underneath them right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Second question. What is the role and what are the responsibilities of the public education system, and is our current system living up to those responsibilities? That's going to go, I believe, Chris, you answer first.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I mean, as I see things, the role of the public education system is to prepare our students not just for a role in the economy, but also to be citizens, right? They're going to be people who are going to participate in democratic deliberation. And they also need to be prepared to live, to be self-governing, to live autonomous lives. And so the responsibilities for school districts need to be threefold, right? They need to prepare our students so that they could enter the economy. It doesn't have to be prepare them for college. There are many jobs that one can get with a high school degree, and we need to make sure that we have strong career technical education too, so that students who opt not to go to college can get jobs. But job preparation is just one. As someone who's taught political philosophy for 25 years, of course, I'm going to be an advocate for making sure that students are prepared to participate productively and constructively in democratic deliberation. That means having the self-confidence to participate constructively, and that means to try and avoid the tit-for-tat sort of dynamic that we see nowadays, and also to educate them for autonomy so that they can choose to lead the lives that they want to lead according to their own lights, and not simply because they're following the crowd. And that requires making sure that they don't just have educational skills, but also that they can be in tune with their own social and emotional and mental well-being, so that they can act on those things that they freely choose, as opposed to ends that are given to them, or expectations that they are thought to have or ought to have. They need to blaze their own trails. So that's how I see the role of public education. And furthermore, it's the great equalizer too. It gives access to all students.
Thank you. And Bob, your question, or your answer, please.
Matt, I'm very sorry. There was a small glitch when you were asking the question. Can you please repeat it?
Yes. What is the role and what are the responsibilities of the public education system, and is our current system living up to those responsibilities?
Thank you. So, the role of public education is to provide access to the public school children, to anyone who wants and needs an education. Now, to that point, I think that there are core standards that we teach to math, English, science. But one of the things that I talk a little bit about are the core competencies that don't get measured on the standardized tests. I'm a firm believer in something called the VAPA standards, the Visual and Performing Arts standards. And the reason that I want to introduce those aren't really just arts classes. They're modalities of learning that teach students how to communicate verbally, not just in writing. They teach students how to think creatively. They teach students how to problem solve, and they teach students how to work together. And I think that our workforce today demonstrates that there's a demand for those skills. Do I think that public education is effective? Yes. Do I think there's room for improvement? Absolutely. There's always room for improvement, and I think that we can work together to achieve that.
Wonderful. And Kathy, your answer. Let's see. Kathy, are you there? Oh, you know what? I think.
Sorry, I was muted.
Got it.
Sorry.
No.
During class, it's Mrs. Archer, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. It was my fault. I look at teachers as the stewards of public education, and our job is to provide equal access for all children. But that's not that every child gets everything equal. Equity is different from that. We need to meet children where they are and give everybody equity in terms of educational access and support. We need to also teach them to be functional adults in society and also participatory members of society. One of the things that I love about Claremont High School is, and we were able to fund this through CEF's grant program, is a financial literacy program. Okay, in terms of the role of the public education system, this teacher found a program to teach kids how to be financially literate after they leave high school. That's a great example of somebody who's really living up to the responsibilities of the educational system. I also am a firm proponent of vocational education. while 90 to 95% of CUSD student or CHS graduates move on to a four-year or a community college, vocational education is really important because not every student is going to choose that path. So it's important to have offerings for CTE, and there are multiple sections, I won't list them out, of career technical education at the high school. CHS also offers Naviance, which help students make career choices. Is the system perfect? Well, everything is, as a teacher for 24 years, I get to see the results of the system and what my graduates are doing. And in some cases, yes. Is there room for improvement? Always. We can always do better.
Perfect. Okay. Next question, and Bob, you will go first to answer. It's a great segue, actually. College student loan debt and impractical college degrees have taken center stage in national politics recently. Would you support the idea of high schools shifting back to teaching more vocational programs so students graduate with marketable skills in case their college dreams turn into nightmares?
So dual enrollment is a really interesting program, and we can partner with our community colleges in this way so that students can not only get their high school education, but get a leg up in their college education as well. And, you know, an AA degree can go two ways. Some students can use that as vocational training and go straight into great jobs, while other students may use it as a platform to conduct some of their general education and even some of their interest in a major, and then go straight on to a four-year degree from there. I think it is extremely important that we work in career technical education. Baldy View ROP has a wonderful program that we actually underutilize, in my opinion. But I also know that in a town like Claremont, we sometimes focus only on the four-year degree. We think of ourselves as a college town. But I would agree with what Mrs. Archer just said, that it's true that some of our students will thrive in other careers and don't need the four-year degree to do so. Some of our students will go straight into military service and serve our country. Those are notable and laudable goals, and I think we should support them fully.
Very good. And Kathy, your answer.
As I mentioned in the last question, vocational education is so important. These programs provide vocational skills for students who opt into that arena. So when you look at a master's schedule at a high school, CHS offers a number of ROP and CTE offerings, but remember that they're dependent on enrollment. You can't open a section for less than 20 students. But students can go to Baldy View ROP and take a course at their site, or even at the Cosmetology Center in Pomona. And according to Dr. O'Connor, CHS students often choose courses that they have a hard time filling the ROP section sometimes because they want to choose courses that make them more competitive. Nonetheless, these are valuable skills, and it's, the kids leave with vocational experience that they wouldn't get elsewhere. And I think that it's important that we mention that the career and technical surveys that are available to students help them sort of take interest inventories of themselves so that they can build connections and with their own strengths and interests and move on to things that will be more align with their interests and help them be successful after high school.
Thank you. And Chris, your answer.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Matt. And I do have to say that I largely concur and have a slight difference on this issue here. I mean, first of all, I know working with folks in the labor family that I see folks who have rewarding, fulfilling, remunerative careers in various technical fields, particularly in the trades. But what I would say about this is it's important that we continue our career technical education, but I have a concern about their accessibility. We have courses in art, marketing, nursing, dental, and logistics, Some of these are on our campus, the CHS campus, but others, especially the logistics, is at Baldy View ROP. That's a difficult place for students to get to. There's not a convenient bus that'll get there. You need to wait for students to get their driver's license really to get there. Some of them can have their parents take them there. It's down in Ontario, down by Holt someplace. And I was there like a year ago, and I saw it. It's a wonderful place and a wonderful facility, but it's really difficult for students to get there. We've got over 900 students who take CTE courses each year. That's a phenomenal number when you consider that CHS students number about 2,300, 2,400 students. So it's important that we nurture that. I hesitate a little bit, though, to promote it more simply in virtue of the college debt crisis. I think the way to address that crisis is at the federal and state level so that students don't graduate with the debt rather than steer them someplace that they might otherwise prefer not
30
to go.
seconds.
Thank you, Matt.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next question. What are your top 3 priorities for our schools and why? And Kathy, you answer first.
As I mentioned earlier, my platform has a couple of aspects on it, and my number one issue is educational equity. It's so very important, and I did mention this earlier, that particularly in COVID-19, we will definitely not understand the immense learning gaps and equity and access issues that will have resulted from this until the return to school. So really the scramble is going to be, how do we fix that? And as a board member, I'm very much invested in, and a teacher, working towards solving those issues. Also, we have, some very tremendous budget challenges forthcoming. I believe in responsible fiscal management. And as CUSD addresses these current challenges, the uncertainty, fiscal responsibility and conservative spending will be vital. And in order to reduce costs without cutting staff, faculty, or programs requires reduction in expenses elsewhere, and hard decisions are going to be unavoidable. We must continue to work with the creative partnerships with local nonprofits like CEF, the Claremont Educational Foundation, to fund supplemental programs like art, music, and technology. We also rely on support from booster groups, PFAs, and organizations like CLASS that are partners. And then lastly, the issue of safety and wellness, which I mentioned before. And we must work towards a reintegration plan that addresses the physical and mental best interests of staff and students, and assuring appropriate access to mental health supports and training for teachers in trauma-sensitive instruction is so important, and that is actually being piloted this year at 3 elementary schools.
And Chris, your answer. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so if I had to prioritize my 3 main issues, it would be mental health, equity, and parent engagement. So I'll take those in turn. I mean, I started from the beginning of my campaign emphasizing mental health because I was talking to parents, I was talking to teachers, and I was talking to counselors. And I was getting the uniform feedback back from them. They said, this is something that we need to address. That there's been an explosion of requests, particularly at the elementary level, for mental health counseling. And this has come from parents, that students are sad, they are anxious, they are depressed, they're engaging in unhealthy behaviors, some of them rising to the level of cutting later. And they're saying, we need to address this now. And as one counselor put it to me, prevention is the best intervention. So I've emphasized this from the get-go. I've done my homework, found out that while we have school psychologists at 1/2 per elementary school and some interns, we don't really have counselors, and there's a gap there because the school psychologists are busy doing other things, testing and crises. Equity is also an emphasis of mine as well. From the get-go, I've been emphasizing including ethnic studies in the curriculum, following what we did, the good work we did in the Cal State University system. But we also have some nagging and persistent equity or opportunity
30
gaps.
seconds.
And I'm elated that we formed the Racial Equity Committee, and I'm optimistic that they're going to make headway on this issue. I also want to stress parent engagement. It's true that we've had a lot more parent attention and involvement at meetings as a result of Zoom. My concern is mainly with at higher levels. We've
10
had
seconds.
2 school board elections canceled, and I think what we need to do, for lack of competition, and I think what we need to do is start having an eye on recruiting and developing
time.
parents to assume leadership roles.
And Bob, your answer.
Thank you. So I've covered this a little bit too, but health and safety is one of my foremost priorities. And, you know, we talked about COVID-19 and the reopening of schools, and certainly that's present on everyone's mind. We've also talked a lot about mental health, and you know, that has for me a couple of components. One is dealing with the mental health crisis that's a result of social isolation and distance learning, but there's also a mental health crisis that was going on prior to this pandemic, and we have to be really, really conscious of how that affects our kids. Things like cyber safety and bullying, things like stress management and suicide prevention, things like drug intervention. These are really, really important factors that we're going to need to address when we get back on campus and reopen our schools. And by the way, these things aren't going away when we reopen our schools. The effects of these are going to be long lasting. They're going to be with us for years. We're going to need to partner more than ever before with teleservices and community partnered programs like Tri-City Mental Health to get that done. Financial management is also a top concern for me. Again, it's not a problem going away next year. This is going to be with us for a while. We are facing declining enrollment, and the current local control funding formula dictates that we don't get concentration grant funding. So we're going to need to be very cognizant of how we manage our base grant dollars in the local control funding formula so that we maximize student outcomes. And lastly, I agree that parent community engagement is very, very important. I have worked tirelessly as a community volunteer and a leader of nonprofit organizations such as CLASP, Claremont Heritage, and Claremont Educational Foundation. Sustainable Claremont, I will continue to find these partnerships, and I will continue to promote them within our community.
Great. Next question. And Chris, you will have the opportunity to answer first. Censorship in the classroom. How do we strike a balance between teachers being able to express their personal views in their workplace and students being able to form their own views in a neutral learning environment?
Well, as with any public employee, I mean, there are certain constraints. I mean, I have certain constraints as a public employee myself, and I teach in higher education. And we're celebrated for having academic freedom. So the line should be the following: if you're acting in your capacity as a teacher, and you're having a discussion about your topic, or even outside your topic about politics, you're just shooting the breeze. You should be able to exercise your rights to share your views, and do so in a respectful way. That means that if, for example, I think there was a case recently where a teacher was censored for wearing a provocative T-shirt in class. It was something that had to do with the recent George Floyd murder, I think. And, that's the sort of thing where I don't think there should be consequences for employees to express themselves in the manner that is respectful and cognizant of their students' developing abilities. I mean, teachers are role models, and I need to be a role model even at the university level for my students. And I try to model that behavior all along. So I would look wary on any efforts to censor teachers, but by the same token, as a teacher myself, I have a responsibility to stay in my lane and talk about things that are within my purview. It's a little bit easier for me given my discipline, political philosophy. I can probably talk about just about anything, but for others, it's a little bit different.
And Bob, your answer.
So I also want to talk a little bit about, the ability to think critically and to hear opinions that are not our own. I don't think there's a place in the classroom for teachers to try to convince students to agree without thinking through their own values and their own knowledge base. And I also don't think it's appropriate if teachers only contribute a set of facts that leads to one viewpoint rather than the other. I think that we want to give kids broad knowledge and respect them and share the power with them to develop their own opinions and be able to listen to things that they don't agree with so that they can develop counter arguments of their own. The idea to respectfully disagree in this country is very, very important. So as long as teachers are doing it thoughtfully and respectfully, I think that we'll generate students who are able to think for themselves and formulate their own opinions and read the facts and do their own research. And as long as we're doing that, I think we're going to succeed.
And Kathy, your answer.
So I'm a history teacher, been that for a long time. And the role of a public school teacher is to deliver all sides of an issue. And I teach in a world where that can be very contentious sometimes. And we always say in my classroom, attack the idea, not the person. And that means that there should be a strict line. It's not censorship. My job is to educate our youth. My job is to present all sides of the issue and teach students to explore, to discuss, to learn, to evaluate on their own. It's my job to train them to create their own value system and not mirror mine. And in that way, I serve as a role model for them to become critical thinkers. And as a history teacher, teaching the democratic process is very close to my heart. It's really at the core of my teaching. There's no room in that process for my own personal spin. It's my duty to teach them to be critical thinkers, to make decisions for themselves. And in that regard, I don't think my personal viewpoints are appropriate in a classroom setting. Students are exposed to so much in social media, and it's okay to have those conversations in class so long as we keep them well balanced. And really, and what I teach, right? I'm a history teacher, but I teach writing. And the way to teach students how to argue and how to write a great paper that addresses all sides of an issue is to teach them to approach things in an unbiased manner. And, we really want to make sure that they keep those skills when they leave our classrooms.
And I think, thank you. I think we're on to the next question. And that means, Bob, you will be going first. Some people argue that AP courses disproportionately exclude students of color. What are your thoughts?
So racial equity is very, very important to me. It's been a part of my platform from the beginning. And there are statistics that show that some AP classes do not have the same proportion of students of color. And some of that deals with the achievement gap. And I think that's a really important concern. How to shorten the achievement gap and make access to programs like that available, and not just AP, but IB as well. That's a really big concern, and it's something that has to happen going back before the high school years as well. It's something that we work on leading all the way up to those opportunities in high school. I think it's something that is very, very difficult, and one of the reasons why this program, this committee, District Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, is looking at curriculum as one of the things that they're going to study to see whether or not we can get to the root of the problem earlier so that the students, when they reach high school age, are able to participate more equitably.
And Kathy, your answer.
So I am the IB and AP coordinator at my school, and I wish I could say that this statistic was inaccurate, but sadly it's true. So one of the things we need to really work on is equal access or equity. It's one of my platform points. It's one of the biggest priorities of my campaign. How do we increase those numbers? So one of the things I'm most proud of over the last 20 some years is I was on the team to bring AVID, advancement via individual determination, to my campus. And it is a program for students who are the children of, who are going to be the first in the family to go to college. And nothing has given me greater joy over the years than to encourage those students to try honors courses so that they can be in the IB and AP classes in the junior and senior year. We've seen a little bit of an uptick at my school as a result of that. We actually had a policy. If you're an AVID, you have to take honors as a freshman and a sophomore. It helps them with readiness. I also have concerns, this is a very difficult thing for me as a coordinator. I find myself, I'm very encouraging of all students to take these courses. And it's what I feel my role is to help educate parents also, because for some students, no matter who they are, their parents don't have any familiarity with these programs. So really our job is to open up access to all of these programs to all students and their families, and to educate them about why they're beneficial programs and to make them much more inclusive. I'd love to see that happen. I know that Claremont recognizes this. We've had these conversations. I look forward to being part of that process.
Thank you, Kathy. And Chris, your answer.
Yeah, this is the constant dilemma with AP and with other opportunities as well, is that we find a disproportionate a long-term pipeline problem. And to address the pipeline problem, we need to start at the beginning of the pipeline and have interventions at each step. We find this even in higher education as well. So in higher education, when we have faculty hiring committees, if we want to make sure that we diversify the faculty, we need to make sure that we have checks and balances in place to make sure that implicit bias does not interfere in the various decisions at the various stages. So in a search, you have the advertisement, and then later you have campus visits, and then later you have a decision, and there are other decisions in between. The same principle applies here. We need to make sure that we have those interventions in elementary school and in middle school before we get to high school, so that we don't have this pipeline problem once it comes time to determining the AP enrollments. So my hope is that the Racial Equity Committee that's getting off the ground is going to do a wonderful job in starting to address that. I will give that committee my full support, and I'm optimistic that it will deliver, and I hope to help it deliver as well.
Very good. All right. And forgive me, I've got a lot going here. I believe we're on to the next question. I had a system and completely lost it, so we are on to the next question. Is that? I want to make sure everyone answered that last question about AP courses, correct? I think so. All right. So next question, and Kathy, I believe you're going first. Schools are increasingly focused on social justice issues, yet at the same time, on-campus crime, drug use, and student depression also appear to be at an all-time high. In their effort to be all-inclusive, are our schools inadvertently leaving some students behind?
So, great question. Studies show that students of color are often disciplined more harshly than white students, and we must ensure that students of color are not disproportionately suspended or expelled in Claremont schools. In my conversations with district staff, I've learned that they are closely monitoring suspensions of student and expulsions of students of color. You can look at that information on the California dashboard. At the elementary level, the district has had some success with the positive behavior intervention support program. Having been through it in the program training at the secondary level, I know it's not always a great fit at the secondary level, but I am eager to see the district implement a restorative justice program that fills the gaps that PBIS does not offer. And in my conversations with district staff, I've learned that CUSD is investigating the implementation of restorative justice. This is very positive news to hear, but I know as a secondary educator, it will take staff development and a commitment from the district to continue training. As a board member, I would encourage secondary sites to be open to this process as a way to re-engage students and provide an opportunity to reconcile their actions. LACO has some restorative justice resources, but it's going to be interesting to see what the district advisory committee consultant has to offer with respect to these types of programs.
30 seconds.
The district recognizes the inequalities and the differences in service, or not differences in services, but they recognize this, and they are committed, as we see with the formation of the district advisory committee, to really addressing these issues and to addressing the issues of mental health by turning towards the trauma-informed schools. We're hopeful for improvements.
And Chris, your answer.
Yeah, sure, Matt. But before I answer, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. Schools are increasingly focused on social justice issues, yet at the same time, on-campus crime, drug use, and student depression also appear to be at an all-time high. In their effort to be all-inclusive, are our schools inadvertently leaving some students behind?
Okay. When I heard the question the first time, I had the same impression the second time I hear it. I'm not really getting the connection between the two, between the focus on social justice and leaving students behind. So I'll just address the part about leaving students behind. If there are these mental health concerns that you're describing here, then I think that, as I've mentioned in my platform and as I've stressed on the campaign trail, the way to address that is through prevention. Prevention is the best intervention. And what we're finding is that there's a great need at the elementary level that's going unaddressed, and what counselors are reporting at the middle school and high school level is that the concerns intensify. That's where you get suicidal ideation, you get cutting, you get bullying, and you even sometimes get suicide as well. So the way to address this is really earlier in the process, in elementary school. I grew greatly concerned when, through my research and talking with parents and people inside the district, I found out that there's a big gap at the elementary level with counselors. We do have school psychologists, but their workload is taken up doing testing and handling crisis. We do have interns, but they turn over. There's a real need that is exposed by this gap. We need some counselors at the elementary level.
30 seconds.
Perhaps later we could talk about where that funding might come from. I've suggested the SRO, the school resource officer, might be one source for that. But that's how I would address the need that's described in the question.
Thank you. And Bob, your answer.
I think we need to focus on three things. They're all C words: community, culture, and communication. I think that students are at the center of this issue, and they're also, we need to empower them to be able to be part of the problem. I'm going to double down on something I said earlier, which is that we need to share power with students. Students are able to practice restorative justice and de-escalation. They have to be mentored, but they can also be peer mentors for each other. And that's really, really important. I serve on the only equity and inclusion committee currently on a school site in Claremont Unified. When my son was in 6th grade, he was appointed as a student leader of that committee. So it doesn't have to be only the older students that are doing this. And when students get together and role model and talk through these issues with other students, what it creates is a culture where nobody feels alone. And it creates a trust where students can confide in each other, and then they can also learn to confide in adults. I think that we need counseling, and I'm an advocate of increasing counseling. I think counseling will serve not only to mentor those student leadership groups, but also to do such things as drug intervention, suicide prevention, mental health care. So I think that if we come together and we work together and we empower our students, we'll see more success on those arenas.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Next question. And Chris, you will go first. Should schools include education about social media in the curriculum, and at what age would you recommend it start, if at all?
Well, the short answer is yes. I mean, there's no way of avoiding it. I mean, I see it in my own family. My impression is that the district is doing a good job, and it's doing a good job by starting early. I mean, I've gone to workshops where they address social media use as early as elementary school, and I think that as a result of those workshops, I've been able to become a better parent. And as a better parent, I've been better able to monitor my own daughter's use of social media and be able to catch her if she seems down. But I think she's got a good head on her shoulders. And my sense is that by conducting this education campaign, others are able to do it as well. Now, should this go into the curriculum too? Obviously, yes, and I think it does. And I think my daughter has gotten the message, and I'm sure many other students have gotten the message too, about not bullying, about making sure that even when they're just jesting with one another, it's clear that they're just jesting, and being sensitive to how their remarks will be understood, as opposed to focusing solely on the intent with which they give those remarks. So I give the district credit for the work that it's done. Of course, it's a constant battle because the technology constantly changes. But the short answer is yes, and as early as possible.
Thank you. And Bob, your answer.
So I differ a little bit. I do think that that it is very, very important for us to provide education about social media. So making sure that our kids understand what it is, how to use it correctly, what the dangers of it are. I do have a frustration, though, in my own experience as a parent, because not all children and not all families are ready to jump into the social media arena at the same time. And I am finding that the district and some of the school sites and some of the teams and clubs actually use social media as their primary form of communication. And that's forcing students into a social media contract, whether or not they're ready. And if they don't choose to join those social media accounts, then they risk feeling excluded, or risk that students are engaging in group activity without them. And that actually increases mental health stress and does not build an inclusive culture. So I think that we're going to need to work very, very carefully with our parents. And I think we're going to need to take the pulse of the community to find out when is the right time for our students to be engaging in this kind of activity, and what are the moments when a student says, my parents won't let me on Instagram or Facebook or any of the other social medias that kids are on. We have to respect that. That's a family choice as well. And we have to make sure that we honor that and that we make it possible for them to participate fully without having to join social media themselves.
Thank you. And Kathy, your answer.
Absolutely. Yes, schools should include this education. However, I don't believe it's appropriate prior to 7th grade. That said, it wasn't appropriate for my family. And sometimes that doesn't make me the most popular parent, but most social media platforms have age minimum requirements, and those should be strictly adhered to. And really, this is an important topic to discuss because for the past 6 months, technology has become our children's primary method of communication with the outside world. And in the absence of face-to-face dialogue and collaboration, our kids are relying on social media and platforms and chat rooms to converse and interact with each other. And that can get tricky. I don't see a lot of it. And, we have to really have open dialogue with our kids to ensure that they are not being bullied or they're not using the tool inappropriately. And now more than ever, a specific social media education is critical for students and parents as they navigate this communication tool that's become so central to their lives. CEF held a community conversation a couple of years ago with Lori Getz, who's an internet safety expert. And I took pages of notes that night. And I am really happy to see CUSD bringing her back, where she's going to talk about this topic, because it's really such an important piece of our lives. And because student wellness or student social and emotional wellness is at the core of many discussions that we've had at a variety of forums, it is imperative to include the impact of social media in these discussions.
Thank you. All right, so we have 2 questions left. I want to go ahead and make sure that anyone that has a question, we have room, it looks like. I'm looking at the clock. We've got time maybe for 1 or 2 questions from the chat. If you have any, please put them in the live chat. I can see it, and I will take a look. Again, I ask that you address the question to all of the candidates. Again, if we don't have any questions, we can maybe I'll come up with something. But I did want to encourage anyone that's listening or watching, if you have a question that we haven't talked about already, definitely put it in the chat. And if it's about to be covered in the next 2 questions, obviously you'll get your answer. If not, though, I would encourage you to ask a question if you have one. So with that, we have our second to last question. Bob, I believe you will be going first. Are vouchers and interdistrict transfers the same, as both let parents choose a better school district for their students and they bring state money with them?
I don't believe they're the same. I'm not a proponent of the voucher system. With regard to interdistrict transfer, it is true that we have about 25% of our district covered by interdistrict transfers. There are a number of reasons why I believe that is, but let me get to the core of what my belief is. I think they are enhancing our district. I think that the money that they bring with them in the form of the average daily attendance within our funding formula is able to help us pay for programs like the IB program at Claremont High School. And those programs serve our residents. They don't just serve one population. So by having them as a part of our district, we're actually able to make our district better. I think that the other issue that's at play, and this sort of dances around the issue a little bit, but we have an issue going on with housing in Claremont. And some of our families, especially our new families and families of young children, can't afford the entry point of coming into Claremont. And some of them are going into neighboring communities, but they want to come in and get a Claremont education. There's lots of reasons for that. For one thing, Claremont, let's compare it to Upland or Pomona, has a smaller school population. There's more opportunity for those students. So I'm a proponent of having them here, and I'd like to continue that. That said, obviously there's a matter of proportion, and I don't want to see the district transfers overwhelm the district. But I think where we are is a place that I'm comfortable with at this point.
And thank you, Bob. Kathy, your answer.
So I truly agree with Bob's statement. They're not the same. And vouchers are a sensitive topic for me as a public school teacher. I've been in the public school arena for 24 years. My child has always attended public schools. School vouchers are government-funded vouchers redeemable for tuition fees at a school chosen by the student or the student's parents. And they can also be used to cover or reimburse homeschooling expenses. But what happens is they reallocate funds outside the public school system, which could lead to job loss, underfunding of programs, limited course offerings, and increased class sizes. And an unintended result of the school voucher system is an equity issue. There's been a number of reports detailing how voucher programs provide public funding to private schools who can legally remove or refuse to serve certain student populations. And another unfortunate result of the voucher system is the impact they have on enrollment. CUSD is already facing declining enrollment, so the voucher system only exacerbates that. So I'm largely in support of the interdistrict transfer program. As Bob mentioned, approximately 25 or 26% of CUSD students are interdistrict transfers. And this policy provides opportunities for students in neighboring communities to participate in and benefit from our educational community. And it helps the district achieve stable enrollment numbers and sustain valuable programming. It also allows for CUSD families to have the choice of elementary schools for their students, meaning intra-district transfers rather than inter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And Chris, your answer, please.
Well, I'm a firm believer in the public education system. My father was a public education teacher and a principal and a staff worker for the New Jersey Education Association, and I've been in the public education system at the higher education level for my entire career. Public education is a state, local, and national treasure. It's the great equalizer. It's the system that gives students access and doesn't freeze them out from educational opportunity based on their income. And so I'm fully in support of what's going to strengthen public education and not what's going to undermine it. So given that vouchers take money out of the system, it risks undermining public education. By contrast, when you have interdistrict transfers, they're actually reinforcing and strengthening public education. They're strengthening our district for sure. If we did not have that 25, 26% of students who are interdistrict transfers, that would be the equivalent of, like, depending on which schools you're comparing it to, that's anywhere from 2 to 4 elementary schools. I don't think anyone wants to see 2 to 4 elementary schools closed. I mean, just think of all we've gone through and when they tried to close Sycamore 4 decades ago, and then the recent property sale with La Puerta. Those are battles that we don't need to have continuously through declining enrollments. So I think there's a vast difference between the two. And I've actually written a piece about this. It's made it onto the campaign trail in 2 of the city council races. It's called Affordable Housing as an Education Issue. And I wrote it, 8 months or so ago, and it's now entered the school board race too. I'm proud of that article, and it anticipates many of the points that have been made here tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, and we have one more question here, and then it looks like we do have a question in chat. Thank you. Last question that I have is the California Healthy Youth Act of 2016 mandates sexual, reproductive, HIV, and gender identity education for students unless parents opt out of ahead of time. A criticism of this act is that by automatically opting all students in, this inherently takes advantage of households like those of single parents, where some parents may simply be unable to thoroughly review the material being taught to their children. Is there merit to the criticism that some educational policies bypass parental involvement, whether intentional or not? And Kathy, I believe you get the first response.
So in education, we can't be an opt-in system. We have to be opt-out. And I do understand the concerns about the California Healthy Youth Act, which took effect in January 2016. And it provided some improvements to the curriculum that it was being offered. The reason we can't be an opt-in in education is because of equal access to education. So the district was intending to fully roll out this program last year, but COVID prevented that from happening. If we, and let me go back just 1 second to the opt-in, opt-out. It's a really slippery slope, and we don't want kids to, opt into math or opt into English, but it's appropriate to allow students to opt out of sex education. Now, the materials that were brought forth to the district were offered for a span of time, both during the day and in the evening, for parents to come evaluate them. So our only hope is that once COVID is over and we can get back to school full time, that those programs can be rolled out again and students can get the benefit of the programs. And then families also be able to have the choice to opt their students out. The district is aware of the need to do this program, but they don't want to do it online, and LACO hasn't really made a decision yet. And in this last spring, when they did do, or in May of 2019, when they did do the first run of the program, a very small percentage of students only opted out. Of the 541 sixth graders that got the curriculum, only 42 opted out, which is 7.8%.
30 seconds.
Seventh graders, 586 seventh graders got the curriculum, 6% or 36 students opted out. And then at the high schools, San Antonio and Claremont, 615 students were given the program and 8 opted out, which is 1.3%. And that data was shared with the board and the committee. So district's aware of the need to pursue this training, and families will always have the opportunity to opt out.
Thank you, Kathy. Chris, your answer, please.
Yeah, I think that the main priority here has to make sure that our youth are adequately educated in matters involving sex and sexuality. And I do empathize with the scenario that you described, Matt, but that's a scenario that can apply across the board, right? It's not just a single parent who may be overwhelmed. There are other parents who are busy for whatever reason and don't have the opportunity to give something as thorough a look as they might otherwise like. But nonetheless, as educators, in my view, we need to make sure that we're preparing our students for, as I said earlier, to lead lives by their own lights, right? That they're autonomous, that they're self-governing, that they get to call the shots. And so that's why I think it's important that they cover the things that weren't covered prior to the passage of the California Healthy Youth Act, which only involved covering HIV prevention. So it requires covering sexual orientation and acknowledging that there are different sexual orientations. It also requires covering sex refusal, which I think is especially important in today's day and age, and also that it's taught in a mixed gender environment as well, which I think is going to lead to the best educational outcomes. I mean, these are professional educators who have this as their expertise, and I think that as a society, we need to think about this issue from the standpoint of the common good. Opting out, yeah, they can opt out, but also keep in mind they can't selectively opt out. If someone opts out, they have to opt out of the entire curriculum. They can't opt out, for example, of the coverage that people have different sexual orientations. I think that's responsible stewardship for future democratic citizens, and I support that.
Thank you, Chris. And Bob, your answer, please.
So I think that the curriculum largely addresses an important public health issue. And I think our public schools should play a role in public health. Things like disease prevention. Chris just mentioned things like the context of consent. These are important issues. I do recognize that some of the content is content that is challenging for some families and their values. And that's why I actually think the opt-out was the right way to go. Certainly, families have a right to deliver this content in their own way if they so choose. I support that. I think the opt-out allows for that. And I don't think that it will be a problem for those who do take advantage of it. And I would also add that in regard to sort of the idea that parents might not be able to engage in making that decision, I think that's the parent's responsibility. I think that we have to have the right access to the information. One of the things that I've discussed is perhaps having a parent resource center. We now have a parent liaison. Her name is Rosa Leong, who works for the district, and she runs a lot of the evening parent programming. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to extend the work that she does so that there's very easy access, both online access as well as in-person access, so that parents can get information in a way that's accessible to them and in their own timeline. We've seen parents wanting more information. So I think that as long as we make it available, we need to put the control back in their hands, and we need to give them the responsibility and the accountability for making those decisions.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, and we have one last question from chat here. Could the candidates comment on the recent decision to first give the superintendent and assistant superintendents raises in salary and then fire all of the BLAST staff, leaving them without pay? And Chris, you get the first answer.
Okay, thanks for that question, Matt. So I'm laughing because I've actually written on that recently, and so what I would say about that was I was concerned about what happened at the board meeting where the BLAST staff received, or there was a vote to issue the BLAST staff layoff notices, and the reason I was concerned was that the head of the employee association was objecting that they should have considered furloughs first and investigated that more thoroughly. As a public university employee who was furloughed during the Great Recession myself, I'm no big fan of furloughs, but if your employee association is asking you to consider that possibility, then I think that the district really has an obligation to consider it thoroughly. And during the questioning and the discussion, it was disclosed that they had some unanswered legal questions. And I just thought it was premature to vote in favor of layoffs at that time. They should have at least gotten answers to those legal questions so that they could explore the possibility of furloughs first. That didn't happen, and I'm just concerned that that created unnecessary stress on a whole bunch of employees.
Thank you, Chris. And Bob, your answer.
Well, I agree with Chris. I called Amy Weiler, who's the head of CSEA, and the woman he's referencing who spoke in the board meeting, right after that decision was made, to find out more information, to figure out why furloughs were not investigated further. And there was a continuation of that conversation after the board meeting, and I'm pleased that that occurred. You know, the dollars that go into BLAST are fee for service. And that's a different funding mechanism than it is to fund increases for certificated staff or management or classified staff. So because there was no fees being generated and no service being performed, and the district had in fact continued to pay those BLAST teachers throughout the spring and into the first months of this school year, because they had to notice they had to notice the BLAST staff before making any changes. There were dollars being generated without fees or revenue that were going to those employees. So unfortunately, I think it's two different pools of money and a program that was not able to be performed because of COVID.
Thank you, Bob. And Kathy, your answer, please.
So the reason behind the increase in salary for this upper level management is it's called salary smoothing, and it's a regulatory practice in public education. And what the logic behind it was that in comparison to other districts, they found that CUSD was below average in several spots. So any position that was below average that was brought up, and so it smoothed out the salary schedule. BLAST is a different issue. The funding source is totally different. It is so unfortunate. I'm a former BLAST parent, and it was unfortunate that the timing of this occurrence, the salary smoothing occurred earlier in the past, or earlier last year, and then of course COVID led to the BLAST program layoffs. And it's important to distinguish that it was not a layoff in the traditional sense because the program is self-funded. There's no line item in the district budget to protect their salaries while the program has no income. And the county won't permit BLAST programs to run at this time. So it's honestly, such an unfortunate situation, but the two scenarios are sort of unrelated, even though the optics don't appear that way. It is my every hope that the district can bring all these amazing people back at some point to return to the jobs that they do so well, and that parents will have a place for their children where they are protected and cared for, and really, get a great experience like my own kid did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are up on time for questions. I do want to thank everybody for submitting questions. And Eric, thank you for that last question here in chat. We are now going to enter into the final closing statements. I want to just reiterate, in case we don't have too much time, also to give the candidates a little bit of a break. You guys have been doing great. Thank you very much. Everybody who's submitted questions, everyone here who's listening, we really appreciate everybody who has helped put this together. Without your questions, without your participation, obviously without the candidates themselves, we couldn't put on this kind of a presentation, and especially amid COVID and everything like that, all the side effects caused. We thought that this was more important than ever to live up to our mission of providing unbiased, neutral environment for our community to come and get information. So again, I really want to thank everybody who has helped put this on, everybody out in the audience. And thank you very much, candidates. We're now going to enter into the closing statements. And Bob, you're going to start us off. Every candidate is going to speak for about 10 minutes. And if you don't need the 10 minutes, then we'll move on to the next candidate. But I did want to let you know that you do have 10 minutes if you would like. Bob, go ahead and start whenever you are ready.
Thanks so much, Matt. I'm not going to take 10 minutes because I think you've heard a lot from us tonight. But what I do want to talk a little bit about is service through action. I've been a long-time member of this community, and I've been a long-time servant leader in our nonprofits and in our district. And I think it's important that when you consider candidates who have put important things in place. You consider what we've done to better the schools and to better the community. I've had a track record of supporting both physical plant improvements in our schools and programs in our schools. I have served as the leader of several nonprofit boards and consulted with other nonprofits in our community. You can read more about my campaign at www.bobfast.com. While you're there, what you'll see is a broad base of community support. I have 348 endorsements, and they cover a broad range of individuals in our community. It's bipartisan. I have conservatives and liberals. I have people from all walks of life, socioeconomic, racial, gender identity, and affection identity as well. And so I really think it's important that you take note of that and that you understand that that didn't happen by chance. That happened through the good work that I've been doing for many years, and I hope to continue to do in service of this district and this community. It's been a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for your time. And I certainly hope I can count on your vote on November 3rd or before if you're working with the mail-in ballot. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bob. And Kathy, your turn.
Thank you so much. I thank you for the opportunity to share my views this afternoon. When I decided to run for a seat on the Claremont School Board back in January, it was pre-pandemic. I wanted to serve the Claremont community and our schools. Mid-campaign, my entire perspective shifted. My commitment to the community and education remains steadfast. However, now I want to be a part of the board for new reasons. These are such challenging times, and we don't know the full extent, and we've gone over this throughout the course of the last couple of hours. We don't know the full extent of what this pandemic is going to bring. So I actually want to focus on some of the positives that have resulted. As a public school teacher and parent, I've experienced firsthand the challenges of distance learning. As a teacher, some of it's heartbreaking. In my experience, in-person instruction is the ideal educational format for all parties. But this pandemic called for a redefinition of the school experience and curriculum delivery. And I left school on March 13th as a classroom teacher and went back to school on March 16th as a distance learning teacher. It was a retooling in epic proportion. The move to online instruction has been challenging, but here are some positives. Teachers have reinvented lessons for students to engage via Zoom. Students and teachers are increasing their communication skills through social and emotional learning incorporated into synchronous instructional time. The use of Canvas has given teachers and families the opportunity to navigate and master one online format through which the district can provide support and training for all stakeholders. Furthermore, students have a central location to access lessons and instruction and materials. Online instruction has made classrooms paperless, reducing the use of paper and copy machines. And I mean, I'm an old teacher, and this was a big transition to move away from my pink pen and more into feedback in Google Docs and Google Slides. But paper and copy machines are a considerable cost for the district. We also have teachers in CUSD have cloud-based storage for lessons and supplemental materials. So despite the challenges, teachers are finding ways to build relationships and foster student engagement through Zoom, emails, phone calls. I went to the CHS back to school night the other night and had an opportunity to personally engage with some of my daughter's teachers. And I'm hearing when I wander, in and out of the room between our classes, I can hear what's going on in her classroom. And I can affirm for you that teaching from a distance is now focused on connecting and building resilience in our students. Also, it's showing parents how to communicate with each other in a constructive and helpful manner through social media. People are sharing ideas, they're troubleshooting problems for their students, and they're supporting each other. And also, moving meetings online has made them more accessible, which has increased parent attendance and engagement. There's been record attendance at board meetings. And also, I think it's really important to note, we haven't really talked about it tonight, but that families were offered choice as we moved into distance learning. And, they were offered a choice between blended learning and the core and CHAMP programs, which really is very indicative of the idea of choice and flexibility within CUSD. And I look forward to being part of that process of making these informed decisions. So once again, thank you so much for providing the candidates with an opportunity to speak. I want to acknowledge that I have 265 endorsements thus far, which includes a wide variety of the Claremont community, along with a number of CSEA and CFA, Claremont Faculty Association members. And as we head into the final weeks before the election, I hope you'll all visit my website at Kathy Archer that's the number 4, CUSD.com, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Archer for CUSD. I hope you'll keep in mind that I'm the only candidate with 24 years of experience in public education at the secondary level. And I approach decision-making carefully, and I assure you that I'll take the time necessary to examine and assess all board policies and actions. We're living in a society where often reactionary decisions are made with insufficient consideration of consequences. I believe in evidence-based exploration of fact and not a rush to judgment. So I ask for your support and your vote in the November election. Thank you so much.
Kathy and Chris, your turn.
So, Matt, I want to thank you and Active Claremont for providing this opportunity to address your audience tonight, and for hosting and for organizing this. It's a real privilege to be able to have this opportunity. So what I'd like to do is just mention that I too am a teacher, a public school teacher. I'm a public teacher at the university level, and I've been online since mid-March, and it's going to be all year. You may have heard that the CSU has decided all year to be online, and we won't be returning to in-class instruction until fall 2021 at the earliest. So it's baptism by fire for me too. What I'd like to do is just stress 3 things that distinguish me as a candidate. One of the things that distinguishes me as a candidate is that I've conducted an issues-based campaign right from the start. It was not a campaign based on who I know or what conversations I will hold. I've already initiated those conversations, and I did it well before the pandemic hit. And I think that's what our city needs. After all, the last 2 school board elections have been canceled due to lack of competition. And so we desperately need this opportunity to hash out ideas about education and to have a good conversation about education. And I just want to commend my 2 opponents in this race as well for participating in a good, solid discussion about education issues. I'm interested in driving the conversation, and I believe in large part I've succeeded in doing that too. Whether it's the link between affordable housing and the need for stable funding in the school district, as I did many months ago in the Claremont Courier article that I referred to, whether it's the need to foreground and make quite visible having anti-racism be a project of the school district and part of the larger community, as I did in a more recent Claremont Courier article, whether it's involving how to safely reopen our schools, as I did during one of my town halls, and whether it involves the need for greater mental health support, particularly at the elementary level, as I've been stressing throughout the campaign. I feel like I've been driving that conversation, and I'm proud to say that I have, and I'm encouraged that others in this race and other races, in fact, city council races, are picking up on these ideas and using them too. I think that shows that there's broad support for them, and I'm glad to have been a catalyst for those ideas. So it's an issues-based campaign right from the start where I feel like I'm driving a lot of the conversation. The second thing I'd like to say is that, and this was alluded by one of my opponents in this race too, I've supported my words, not just with words, but with actions as well. So I've demonstrated through actions my determination to defend these positions. So in my role for the California Faculty Association, I've been in Sacramento. I've arranged meetings between our members and state legislators in their home district offices on many of the issues that we've been discussing tonight. Funding's always an issue. When we worked tirelessly to elect the governor, we meaning the Cal State University system, got a $300 million baseline increase to our budget, which was the single largest baseline increase in Cal State University history. It was 8%. We worked tirelessly to get Tony Thurmond elected. Also, AB 1460, the Cal State University ethnic studies requirement. I had a hand in doing that too. And also funding for counselors, as I described earlier in some remarks today. The point is that I didn't do this by myself. I'm not claiming that. It takes a village to get these things done. What I'm claiming is that I was proud to be part of that village, and I'm proud to be part of the Claremont village as well, looking to improve our Claremont schools. Also, same thing with the anti-racism project. Again, I think I took a stand early on when I said these are things that we need to look at, from the ethnic studies curriculum to diversifying the teaching force, to closing equity gaps, to re-examining the role of the school resource officer. I did all that in a very visible place. And lo and behold, about 3 weeks later, the district approved the Racial Equity Committee. Now, I'm not claiming that I did that by my own. Again, it takes a village. The Sycamore Equity and Inclusion Committee definitely played a major role. Claremont Change played a major role. There were other players in the community that played a role. All I'm saying is that in this village, where it takes a village to get things done, I was proud to be part of that village in my own way. Also, we talk a lot about closing equity gaps as well. What have we done personally to close equity gaps? Many people may not see things this way, but when I'm with workers who are looking to get a higher wage, some people see malcontents, some people see picketers. I see something entirely different. I see people who want to close equity gaps. Why? How? Well, because parents who can put food on the table, working one job instead of two, are parents who could spend more time helping their kids with their homework. That's a way of closing equity gaps. And I'm proud to say that I've stood with people who were attempting to better themselves in that way. The third and final thing that I'll mention is I'm an independent thinker. I teach philosophy. I've done it for 25 years. This is now my 26th. I teach students to think critically and independently, and I practice what I teach. And so I think I've manifested this characteristic in a number of ways. I spoke up for people. I spoke up about prematurely reopening our schools. I thought that was an opportunity to speak up. I spoke up for process when talking about the blast furloughs versus layoffs. That was mainly speaking up about process and really resorting to something as a last resort. And also, I've spoken up vigorously from the earliest point of my campaign in favor of Proposition 15. So what I want to say in conclusion is the following. You've got some choices in this race, and I just want to say that I'm distinctive for three reasons. One, A, I feel like I'm driving a large part of the conversation. B, I back my words with actions. I don't just talk a talk, I walk the walk. And C, I'm an independent thinker, not afraid to take a stand. So with that said, I just want to say thanks again to Active Claremont. Thanks again to Matt. Thanks again to my opponents for a very nice conversation tonight. And I'm hoping that I can count on your support in the upcoming election. If you'd like to learn more about me and my campaign, my website is above my head, right behind me. And then also tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, I'm having a virtual conversation on equity issues from ethnic studies to school resource officers. And that's available for registration on my website. I'd be happy to continue this conversation with you. So thanks again to Matt, to Active Claremont, to my two distinguished opponents, and I look forward to continuing our conversations.
Wonderful. Again, a huge thank you to everybody for participating. We really appreciate all of the candidates for being flexible and willing to come out and share with us. Hopefully this has been beneficial for all of you. I know it's been hugely beneficial for me. Again, candidates, we really thank you. And I know it's a little odd that a forum like this doesn't end, but one person should clap. I think you guys did wonderful, and we really do appreciate everything that you brought to this conversation. I think it's hugely important that the community hears what the ideas are from our future leaders. So I really do appreciate everybody for helping putting this on. And to everybody, I wish you a good night, and we'll see you next time. Good luck, candidates. Thank you very much. And we're going to go ahead and end the stream now. Thank you.